Listen, Melissa Lee has been criticised for her reaction to this last week when News Hub went down. But can I say, she made a good point. How many news media sources do you need in this country? And I'll go through them again. The New Zealand Herald and all of NZME's print media, all of whom have media websites, okay, and all of whom update themselves on almost a sort of a half-hourly basis. So you always find stories breaking on New Zealand Herald. It's immediate, or roughly immediate enough, and it's in depth in many cases with their investigations. News Talk ZB, again, largely a radio station, but with quite coherent and integrated with New Zealand Herald and NZME website. Again, I'm getting emit the news immediately. Stuff. Whether you like their disposition or not, they're privately owned, they're allowed to be liberal lefties, and they are. But again, they're very similar to New Zealand Herald. They've got a website. Anything breaks, bang, you can go there instantly and see it. Radio New Zealand, state broadcaster, there it is. There you go. And then you've got your privately owned medias, your Wairarapa Times, your Ashburton Guardians, your Otago Daily Times, for example. If you want an independent view, a different way of looking at the world, they're there as well. And then you've got your online media, newsroom, spin-off. Okay, they're liberal lefties, but it doesn't matter, they exist. Small little ones that look after regions like Crux, CRUX, which is a sort of three-man operation or three-person operation in Queenstown and those lakes, but they are, again, throughout New Zealand. So there's a multiplicity of news sites in New Zealand, let alone go overseas. You can go to the BBC, you can go to the New York Times, you can go to the Sydney Morning Herald, you can go to the Australian, you can go to Le Monde, the English version of, you can go to the Daily Mail, which is really good, I have to say. It's fantastic if you want a bit of sensationalism with your news, but also it breaks some really good stuff too. You can go to the Daily... There's a massive amount of news that's available, content available online. Huge amount. So if one or two players who are expecting you to sit down at 6 o'clock and watch the news are going to the wall, that's simply because they've been unable to be able to move with the times like all these other news sources have. And I'd be thinking, and Jackie will be listening to this in actual fact, when she was in New Zealand, I would think that in terms of news sources now, places and information, I would think it would be double the number that exists in New Zealand as a New Zealand resident. And we'll bring her on now, Jaqui Lane from Australia. That'd be right, wouldn't it, Jack? Because there wasn't an awful lot of news. I mean, there was TV1, there would have been TV3 in your days. There were all the old traditionals. The multiplicity of online media didn't exist when you were last in New Zealand, yeah?
Yeah, when I was last living there permanently, no. Well, I left in 1987, so, you know, that was it. You had the two main channels and...
Oh, that's right. There was no TV3. Yeah.
No cable, no TV3, no nothing.
Yeah. So, no, the story over here today has been that a program that you'll remember, Fair Go, another one, Sunday, which is the news program here, the current affairs program. They've both been cut as of today as 68 jobs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's staff and tears and, you know, these sort of iconic programs are going to die, but that's just the nature of the beast. They're cutting about 10% of their workforce at TVNZ, but they've still got an awful lot of people working for them. After today, they'll still have about 630, 640 staff, so it's not exactly, you know, it's not exactly dying.
Yeah, and look, the reality is, you know, I work in the publishing industry, and you know, in the last 30 years, that's changed radically. And you know, there's only old fogies like us, perhaps, you know, some of us who hark back to the old days. But you know, the way people consume everything, media, news, has just changed radically and will continue to change. You can't stay the same. No, and you adapt or die. Gosh, hasn't it been the nature of human existence? Oh, funny that, yeah.
And that's why we're all here.
Yeah, and I don't mean to sound uncaring, but the reality is that change is constant and always has been, and you have to evolve, really.
Yeah, no, that's right. In fact, it goes back to the 18th century. I always used to have a lovely phrase by George Meredith, a poet, who always used to say, change the strongest son of life. I can remember using that in an English essay once. Hey,
there you go.
Talking about change, one of the iconic sports heroes of Australia has got herself into a spot of bother. She is is she the captain? She's certainly the leading face of football in Australia. Is it Melinda Kerr? Is that her first name?
Sam Kerr.
Sam Kerr, that's right.
Kerr.
She plays for Chelsea, I think. And she has become quite iconic in terms of sport in Australia, and obviously gained, even more prominence as a result of Australia and New Zealand hosting last year the Women's World Cup for football. Can you explain the background to this for me? Because it seems an odd controversy from afar.
Well, only from what I hear in the news, obviously. So, January a year ago, apparently she, after I think her triple header score in a Chelsea game or something, she obviously went out and did a bit of partying, was going home and was perhaps a bit intoxicated, threw up in a cab apparently, and then had a stoush with the cab driver about the fare. And a policeman turned up, and apparently she, amongst other things, called him a stupid white bastard. A year later, the UK police have charged her with, racism, being racist and causing offence and harm and whatever to the said, cop on the beat. So, and Sam Kerr really holds an amazing, iconic space in Australia in terms of women's soccer and worldwide. She's, become a international star and won all these awards. She's of mixed Indian Australian heritage. So she's really a pin-up girl for world soccer as well as Australia. So for for her to be charged with racism, I guess, is a huge kind of issue in terms of her own profile, and given that she's a mixed race person, she's also gay, so there's a kind of overlay on that as well. So it's on the front page news everywhere here at the moment, and there's two schools of thought. That if she was in Australia and she'd said that, it would never have gone to court. It might have gone to the Human Rights Commission or somewhere, but it wouldn't be a crime in Australia to call someone a stupid white bastard. But apparently in the UK you can. So that's one thing. And I guess the other one is around, if she was a white heterosexual married female, would it have even been an issue? So, it's taken front page news, and we're all getting a lesson in what's racial or what's racist at the moment.
I imagine so. It's an odd thing for her to say because her dad's white. He was a professional Aussie rules player. Her mum is Indian. I think she was even born. So I don't know. Anyhow, she did say it. And she was drunk.
Yeah, she did say it. Yeah.
And you would expect, I would imagine New Zealand police get called that every day of the week, and I don't see people arraigned in New Zealand courts for calling somebody a stupid white bastard. If though she was a white heterosexual woman and it had been, a Sikh policeman, and I guess this analogy has been used in Australia too, has it? Or a black policeman, and she called him a stupid black bastard. Or would she have been arrested too? Yes, I imagine she would have been.
Under UK law, possibly. I mean, she wasn't arrested. She was charged 13 months after the fact. So she was not arrested at the time. Look, and really, it's a really interesting thing because as somebody in the news said, for example, was reported, if an Indigenous person said, whites are mayonnaise-eating Amway salespeople, who in the hell is going to care? And then if anything, whites would simply turn it into a marketing opportunity. So this whole thing around what's racial prejudice versus what's racial versus racist, you're getting deep into politically correct territory, and there's so many overlays and nuances. So, again, given
I read a piece in the Sydney Morning Herald, I think, a couple of days ago from Peter Fitzsimons, a rather garrulous individual, but he's certainly on the Liberal side of things over there now, the former Australian rugby player, in which he said Sam Kerr should be stood down immediately from a position as captain of the Australian football team, and should face the same consequences as, anybody else in that particular position. Is that the standard position that's been taken over there?
No, it's two positions. One is that, and also Craig Foster, a well-known football player here, has also, and campaigner for human rights, has also come out and said that she should be stood down. So there's that position, and then there's, I guess, the other position that under Australia, the legal position under there would be no way in Australia that it would come up, because it's probably not prosecutable in Australia. It's really the UK law. But that's kind of, I think in a way, Michael, that's splitting hairs. I think it again raises this issue around racism, and that's a particularly sensitive one here, in Australia, also New Zealand, in terms of our Indigenous populations, and also, here we've talked about it, the multiplicity of cultures that we have here in Australia. It's a very, people get very emotional and very emotive about it. So the legalistic approach is, you wouldn't be able to prosecute that here. The emotional approach is something quite different.
Yeah, the other thing I think I've just read is another case. I guess, I don't know, Marty might be dealing with this one. And that is, there is an Australian rugby league player, professional rugby league player, NRL, who's been stood down for calling somebody else a monkey on the pitch. I think it was in the opening round of the NRL. I can't remember the two teams involved. You'll know this better than I. But he has been stood down for calling him a monkey. Now, the thing that struck me as odd about that was the recipient of the monkey comment Aborigine, but the person who made the comment was brown too, wasn't he? And I think you're referring to the event that happened when the NRL was over in America. It was over there on that opening round, at Las Vegas. In the opening round. Yes, so you're right. Again, it's this thing around, where we've got to is, doesn't matter what your race or creed or whatever. It's it's what you say and who you say it to. But that's splitting again. I think that's. It's that, I guess. But can a brown person be racist, make a racist remark to another brown person? That's just like, can I say, Jack, it would be like me calling you a stupid white bastard. And you go, well, how could you be offended if you stupid white bastard? And you're going, he's white.
Or you might, or an Australian might call me a stupid white New Zealander.